Flight 331 vanished without a trace. 7 years ago, families mourned, wreckage was never found, and the airline moved on until it suddenly landed yesterday at LAX with the same crew, the same passengers, and none of them aged a single day. The terrifying part, they don't remember anything, and they're not acting like themselves. Before you watch, don't forget to subscribe to The Last Knock for more real-life horror mysteries from the skies. It was a Tuesday. Just another rotation of the Earth, another sunrise over the Atlantic. At Boston Logan International Airport, the usual hustle and bustle, the symphony of jet engines and hurried footsteps. A day where nothing interesting, nothing out of the ordinary was supposed to happen. Just the mundane routine of modern air travel. Delayed flights, lost luggage, overpriced coffee. The usual complaints. Planes landed one after another, adhering to their schedules, their routes meticulously planned and filed. Planes took off, climbing into the vast expanse of the sky, carrying dreams, hopes, and the weary souls of business travelers. People shuffled by, bored, their faces illuminated by the glow of their smartphones, oblivious to the world around them. But then, something odd, something that defied explanation, began to unfold in the skies above. Flight 331, or rather. What appeared to be Flight 331, a Boeing 777, a long-range behemoth of the skies, not on any schedule, not in any system, a complete anomaly, appeared on radar. A blip, an echo, a ghost in the machine, no radio call. Silence on the frequency, an unnerving void in the constant chatter of the airways. No flight plan, no origin, no destination, no purpose. Just a phantom aircraft hurtling through the sky. It just arrived. As if materialized from thin air, a conjuring trick on a grand scale. Air traffic controllers stared, stunned, their years of training, their meticulous procedures rendered useless in the face of the impossible. The plane landed perfectly, a smooth, flawless touchdown that defied its mysterious origins. Taxied and stopped, precisely in the center of the designated area, as if guided by an unseen hand, but no one got out. The doors remained sealed, the windows dark and impenetrable. No doors opened, no stairs extended, no sign of life within, no crew, no passengers, no requests. Just an eerie silence emanating from the metal shell. It just sat there, silent, a metallic monolith, defying explanation. A ghost ship on the tarmac, a vessel from nowhere carrying nothing. Emergency crews surrounded it, their flashing lights painting the scene in an unsettling glow. Wary and confused, unsure of what they were dealing with, what dangers lurked within. Hours passed. The clock ticked on, each second amplifying the mystery. The sun set, casting long, ominous shadows across the tarmac, deepening the sense of unease. Still nothing. The plane remained stubbornly silent, a dark secret under a darkening sky. Finally, a team, clad in protective gear, their faces grim with apprehension, forced the doors open. The hinges groaned in protest, breaking the oppressive silence. Inside are empty seats, no luggage, no crew, an unsettling emptiness that stretched beyond the physical space. Just a cold metallic smell, a sterile antiseptic odor that hinted at something unnatural. No logbooks, no black box. All the usual records, the vital clues were missing. The plane was scrubbed, meticulously cleaned of identity, every trace of its origin, its purpose, erased. It was as if it had never carried a soul. A phantom vessel, devoid of history, devoid of life. Authorities were baffled, experts were stumped. The mystery deepened with every passing moment. How did it land? Who was flying it? Where did it come from? Who or what brought it here? And more importantly, why? This wasn't a misplaced jet. This wasn't a simple error in navigation. It was a riddle, wrapped in a mystery, inside an enigma. The story was just beginning, and the answers, it seemed, were lost somewhere in the clouds. You don't just leave a multi-million-dollar mystery sitting out in the open, especially not one this perplexing. The sheer value of the aircraft alone demands answers, not to mention the potential safety implications. On the runway, it was a sitting duck, vulnerable to the elements, potential vandals, or even worse, further tampering. Every minute it remained exposed increased the risk of losing crucial evidence. Flight 331 was carefully towed, inch by painstaking inch, away from the prying eyes of the public and the unpredictable whims of the weather. Into Hangar 17, a cavernous space usually reserved for major overhauls and top-secret projects. A fortress of concrete and steel designed to withstand the most extreme conditions and keep its contents secure, locked down tighter than Fort Knox. This wasn't just about protecting the plane, it was about safeguarding the investigation itself. Security was extreme, a multi-layered system designed to deter and detect any unauthorized access. Magnetic locks, humming with power, sealed every entry point. Biometric scans ensuring only authorized personnel could even approach the aircraft. Armed guards patrolling the perimeter, their presence a constant reminder of the gravity of the situation. Cameras everywhere, their lenses recording every movement, every shadow, leaving no blind spot unmonitored. The plane was now, for all intents and purposes, isolated from the outside world. Exhibit A, the centerpiece of an unprecedented investigation. In the strangest case, a puzzle wrapped in an enigma, shrouded in unanswered questions the FAA had ever seen. A case that defied logic, challenged protocol, and threatened to rewrite the rules of aviation. Inside, scientists and engineers, the best minds in the field, meticulously prepared to dissect every inch, every wire, every rivet, searching for any anomaly, any clue, any explanation. For 48 hours, a relentless around-the-clock effort, it was the most scrutinized object, poked, prodded, and analyzed with every tool and technique available on Earth. Every nation, every agency, every expert was watching, waiting for answers. Teams documented everything, every scratch, every reading, every observation, no matter how insignificant it seemed. Empty cockpit devoid of any sign of struggle or forced entry. Vacant galleys, untouched meals, still sitting on the counters, a snapshot of a flight interrupted. Silent seats, unoccupied, adding to the eerie stillness of the scene. No hidden compartments, no secret panels, no ingenious escape routes. No clues, just a baffling absence of anything that could explain the impossible, just an empty shell, a ghost of a flight, a haunting reminder of the mystery that remained unsolved. As the second night fell, casting long shadows across the hangar floor, the hangar was sealed tight, a promise of security and containment. Guards took their posts, their vigilance unwavering, their eyes scanning the darkness. Cameras watched, their silent gaze encompassing every corner of the facility. The mystery was locked in, seemingly impenetrable, contained within those reinforced walls. Or so they thought. Little did they know the most perplexing chapter of this mystery was yet to be written. 48 hours after its mysterious arrival, after the world had been given time to process the impossible, the world was completely and utterly obsessed. Every news outlet, every social media platform, every conversation revolved around one thing: the ghost plane. The mystery of the ghost plane. Where did it come from? How did it get here? And most importantly, what secrets did it hold? On the third morning, as the sun began to paint the sky with hues of orange and pink, a new chapter in this bizarre saga was about to unfold. With a sense of anticipation hanging heavy in the air, investigators finally opened Hangar 17, the very place where the impossible had occurred. But what they found inside defied all logic and reason. It was empty. The Boeing 777, the colossal machine that had captured the world's attention, had vanished without a trace. It was simply gone. No marks, no debris, not even the smallest fragment of evidence remained. All that was left were just faint tire imprints, barely visible on the cold, hard concrete. The hangar was sealed tight, the alarms untouched, showing no signs of tampering. There was absolutely no sign of forced entry or any kind of exit. The security guards swore under oath that the massive hangar doors never opened, not even for a second. No one saw a thing, no unusual activity, no flicker on the surveillance monitors. It was as if, against all the laws of physics and logic, the plane had simply evaporated into thin air, leaving behind nothing but an unsettling silence. Panic set in, a cold wave of dread washing over everyone involved. The search was frantic, a desperate attempt to find something, anything that could explain the impossible. They scoured the airport, every corner, every hidden space. They scanned the skies, hoping to catch a glimpse of the missing aircraft. They pored over the radar, searching for any anomaly, any blip, but found nothing. Absolutely nothing. A machine the size of a building, a marvel of engineering, had completely disappeared as if it had never existed at all. It had vanished from a locked, guarded room, a place that was supposed to be impenetrable. The officials were left utterly bewildered, their faces etched with disbelief and confusion. They were confronted with an impossible truth, a reality that defied all explanation. Their prize exhibit, the object of intense scrutiny and fascination, had become the mystery itself, an enigma wrapped in an impossibility. Flight 331, the ghost plane, had vanished once again, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and mounting fear. Again. It was as if the world was caught in a terrifying loop, a nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. Investigators turned to the cameras. Hangar 17 was covered in high-definition surveillance, the outside footage boring, guards pacing, wind blowing, nothing at the doors. The hangar stayed sealed all night, but inside at exactly 3:32 a.m. every camera cut to static. 60 seconds of white noise. At 3:33 a.m. the feed returned. The plane was gone. No fade, no movement, just empty concrete. The rest of the night the cameras recorded nothing but an empty hangar. Investigators replayed the footage endlessly. The only evidence, a minute of static. The plane was there, and then it wasn't. As dawn broke and chaos erupted over the missing plane, something else happened. At 3:33 a.m., the exact minute the plane vanished, a radio in the control tower crackled to life. The call sign, Aero 331. Through static, a calm pilot's voice spoke 7 words. "Flight 331 is departing. We are going home." The controller, stunned, tried to respond. No reply. The call sign vanished. The voice was gone. Suddenly, the disappearance wasn't silent. Someone, or something, claimed to be flying the plane. Departing from where? Going home to what? The message answered nothing, but raised 1,000 new questions. Investigators analyzed the radio recording. The voice matched Captain William Bill Anderson, dead for over a decade. His death was well documented. He'd been buried in Arizona, yet his voice had just broadcast from a vanished plane. The match was undeniable. Anderson had been a senior pilot for Aeroline, the airline whose faded logo was still on the plane's tail. He'd flown that very model for years. Suddenly, "We are going home" sounded even more chilling. Was the plane returning for its pilot, or was this a cruel hoax? Logic said it was impossible. The facts said otherwise. A dead pilot had just radioed from a plane that no longer existed. The case had become a ghost story. The investigation became the most advanced and useless in history. Every agency got involved. No one found answers. Theories about physical removal were dismissed. The hangar was impenetrable. The radio call was analyzed. No deep fake, no edit. It was a live broadcast from a 777's cockpit. With no plane, no suspects, and no explanation, the case hit a wall. The final report: we have absolutely no idea what happened. Flight 331 became a legend of modern mystery. With no answers, the public filled the void. Theories ranged from secret government tech to alien abduction. Some said it was a cloaking device or teleportation experiment gone wrong. Others claimed it was an alien craft disguised as a 777, beamed back to the mothership. The supernatural theory? The plane was a ghost ship, piloted by Anderson's spirit, vanishing into another realm. Or maybe, for 1 minute, Hangar 17 became a gateway to another reality. In a case with no rational answers, even the wildest ideas seem possible. Years later, we know nothing more than we did then. Flight 331 remains aviation's greatest mystery. A plane appears, empty, gets locked away, and vanishes. Cameras record only static. A dead pilot radios in. Every fact is documented, yet the story is impossible. Was it a conspiracy, a ghost story, or something stranger? Is the plane still out there, flying through another dimension? Experts have no answers. There are no loose threads, only the story itself. A modern legend, both real and unbelievable. The question remains, what really happened to Flight 331? Where did it go? Your guess is as good as mine, and maybe that's the most unsettling part of all. At the bustling JFK International Airport, a major hub of global air travel, the dedicated air traffic controllers, professionals at the top of their game, were diligently managing the usual intricate ballet, a carefully orchestrated dance of smooth arrivals and timely departures, ensuring the safety of everyone in the sky. Then, without warning, everything changed. Suddenly, unexpectedly, a blip appeared on the radar, a mysterious anomaly, unregistered, completely off the books, unscheduled, without any prior notice, and eerily silent, not responding to any attempts at communication. No transponder signal matched the blip's signature. No flight plan existed in the system, nothing to explain its presence. The controllers called out, repeatedly attempting contact, but there was only static, a deafening silence in response. The blip moved purposefully, steadily, like a standard commercial airliner following a familiar flight path, unwavering and undeniably real, not a figment of anyone's imagination. The senior controller, a seasoned professional, a veteran of countless shifts and unusual situations, felt a chill run down his spine. An unsettling premonition. This was no ordinary glitch in the system, no simple technical malfunction. He immediately ordered the surrounding airspace cleared of all other traffic, bracing for the unknown, preparing for a situation unlike any he had ever encountered. The blip was locked on a direct, unwavering approach to JFK, heading straight for the airport. Then a crackling voice filled with static and desperation broke through the silence. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday! This is Global Skyways identifying as Flight 331, urgently requesting an immediate emergency landing." The control room froze in stunned silence, every controller paralyzed by disbelief. That very flight, Global Skyways Flight 331, had mysteriously vanished over the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, disappearing without a trace 7 long years ago, becoming a haunting legend. The pilot reported experiencing severe turbulence, violently shaking the aircraft, and critical instrument failure, rendering navigation difficult, urgently asking for updated weather information, desperate for any guidance and immediate runway clearance for an emergency landing. The controllers exchanged bewildered, stunned glances. A silent conversation of disbelief. Was this some kind of elaborate, cruel hoax? But the voice was undeniably real, distressed and filled with genuine panic, and chillingly matched the mysterious blip's precise position on the radar screen. The senior controller, drawing on years of experience, steadied himself, pushing aside his own shock, and calmly responded to the Mayday call, treating it with the utmost seriousness as a genuine life-or-death emergency. He began to expertly guide the ghost plane, this impossible apparition, toward a designated runway, carefully clearing the path, his voice remaining remarkably calm and collected, despite the sheer, unbelievable shock of the situation. The impossible was actually happening. Right before their very eyes, a flight declared lost, presumed destroyed, was somehow inexplicably coming home. Every single eye in the control tower, every member of the staff was now fixed intently on the radar screens, glued to the unfolding drama, anxiously waiting for the next crucial move, holding their breath in anticipation. The entire world, for one heart-stopping moment, collectively held its breath, gripped by suspense and disbelief. The ghost on the radar, this enigma from the past, was now, against all odds, about to attempt a landing. As Flight 331 made contact, JFK erupted into controlled chaos. Emergency protocols were activated for a scenario no one had ever imagined. Fire trucks and ambulances lined the runway, bracing for the unknown. The missing Boeing 777 descended, its livery unchanged, its exterior pristine. It landed smoothly, as if nothing had happened. The plane sat motionless, surrounded by emergency vehicles. No one dared approach at first. Hazmat teams moved in, prepared for anything. News helicopters circled, broadcasting the surreal scene worldwide. The pilot's voice returned, confused. "Why the welcome party? We're ready to taxi." The controller told him to hold position. The pilot sounded casual, unaware of the 7-year gap. For him, it was just another flight from London. For everyone else, it was a miracle, or a nightmare. The world watched, transfixed as the impossible became real. The past had landed in the present. The plane, carrying its oblivious passengers, was carefully towed. It was guided slowly but surely to a secure hangar, a place where answers hopefully could be found. The heavy doors began to close, sealing the aircraft and its occupants off, isolated from the world and the passage of time that had continued without them. As the hangar fell silent, faces appeared in the windows. Children, their eyes wide with a mixture of boredom and anticipation. Business travelers, eager to get to their destinations, unaware of the reality that awaited them. Families, all of them unchanged since 2018. Trapped in a moment, a bubble, a mystery yet to be unraveled. Outside the plane, inside the hangar, officials prepared, their expressions grim, knowing the weight of the situation. They were ready to make contact, to step into the unknown and face whatever awaited them within the aircraft. Psychologists, doctors, specialists in trauma and the human mind, and federal agents, their faces stoic, their purpose clear, stood by, a silent vigil, ready for anything, for any eventuality, no matter how bizarre or unbelievable. The lead negotiator spoke, his voice calm and measured, to Captain William Howard, the man in charge, the one who held the key to understanding what had happened. The captain was calm, a professional to his core, but frustrated by the delay, by the lack of information, by the sheer absurdity of the situation. He demanded to know, his voice rising with each word, why his passengers, the people under his care, were being held, kept in the dark, treated like prisoners. The first official to board, the one tasked with making sense of the impossible, was Dr. Aris Thorne, a man of science stepping into a realm beyond comprehension. He was a government psychologist, a specialist in the human mind, but nothing in his training could have prepared him for what he was about to encounter. The cabin was normal, at first glance, flight attendants collecting trash, performing their duties as if nothing was amiss, passengers gathering bags, preparing to disembark, ready to return to their lives. But as Dr. Thorne moved further into the cabin, they looked up, confused by the presence, the unexpected intrusion of officials, their faces betraying a growing unease. Dr. Thorne recognized faces, a chilling realization washing over him, from missing persons posters, faces that had haunted families for years, now alive and breathing before him. And the most unsettling thing of all, no one had aged, not a single wrinkle, not a single grey hair. Their clothes, magazines, and even their phones were relics from 2018, a snapshot of a world frozen in time. A young woman asked, her voice filled with genuine confusion, why her phone, her lifeline to the modern world, couldn't connect to Wi-Fi, a simple question that masked a far deeper truth. She had no idea, no inkling of the reality that awaited her. Her device was obsolete, a museum piece in a world that had moved on. The passengers were, in essence, living time capsules, relics of a bygone era, unaware of the years, the monumental changes that had passed, the progress that had been made, the losses that had been suffered. For them, in their minds, in their hearts, it was still April 2018, a world without the advancements and challenges of the years to come. The world outside, beyond the metal shell of the aircraft, was 7 years older, a different place entirely, a stark contrast to the reality they still inhabited. The authorities faced, at that moment, a delicate task, a monumental challenge of how to reconcile two realities, how to break the truth, the unbelievable truth, to these unsuspecting souls. The passengers waited patiently, anxiously, oblivious to the storm, the emotional upheaval about to break, about to crash down over their lives, their understanding of the world, their very identities. They were home, back on solid ground, but everything had changed irrevocably, fundamentally, in ways they couldn't even begin to imagine. The impossible, the unthinkable, had become flesh and blood, a tangible reality, a mystery walking among them. The mystery, the enigma, the puzzle of Flight 828 was only beginning, its tendrils reaching out to touch every aspect of their lives and the lives of those around them. Disembarkation was slow and controlled. Passengers were told there'd been an incident and were led into a makeshift processing center. Confusion grew as they noticed unfamiliar technology and officials in futuristic gear. Interviews began, names, dates, memories. Every passenger believed it was still April 14th, 2018. They described turbulence, flickering lights, and a strange hum, then a normal landing. No one remembered lost time. Medical exams revealed the impossible. No one had aged. Pregnancies and injuries were unchanged. Their belongings, phones, newspapers, laptops, were all from 2018. Each item was a piece of a puzzle that defied logic. They were living artifacts, untouched by time. The world they'd returned to was unrecognizable. They had stepped out of a time machine, unaware they'd traveled at all. The shock was only beginning to set in. The authorities struggled to process what science could not explain. The passengers were home, but home was now a foreign land. Breaking the truth to the passengers, delivering the unbelievable news, was a monumental task, a challenge that stretched the limits of human understanding and compassion. Grief counselors and psychologists explained it was 2025, not 2018. 7 years had mysteriously passed. The reactions were disbelief, a stunned silence that filled the room, denial, a desperate clinging to the reality they knew, and heartbreak, a wave of sorrow crashing over them as the weight of the lost years settled in. Evidence was shown, newspapers chronicling the events of the missing years, broadcasts reporting on a world that had continued without them. Photos of families now 7 years older, faces etched with the passage of time. Children had grown up, their childhoods unfolding in their absence. Spouses had remarried, finding solace and companionship in new lives. Parents had passed away, their final moments unshared, their goodbyes unspoken. The world had moved on without them, relentlessly marching forward, oblivious to their absence. The crew faced endless debriefings, every detail scrutinized, every action questioned. Flight recorders revealed a 7-year gap, a void in the data that defied explanation. It was as if the plane had vanished, swallowed by some unknown force, then reappeared as suddenly and inexplicably as it had disappeared. Reunions with families were bittersweet, a mixture of joy and profound sadness, filled with confusion and pain. The joy of return tainted by the reality of what had been lost. Some found their lives unrecognizable, their homes transformed, their neighborhoods unfamiliar, their places taken by time, their roles filled by others who had stepped into the void. The passengers were ghosts, haunting the edges of their former lives, in their own stories, characters displaced from the narrative, struggling to find their place. They had returned, but to a world that no longer fit them, a world that had evolved beyond their grasp. The trauma was deep, a wound that time alone could not heal, the questions unanswerable, lost in the mysteries of time and space. The miracle of survival was shadowed by loss, the constant reminder of what they could never reclaim. They were living proof that time can wound, leaving scars that may never fully fade, as much as it heals, offering solace while simultaneously inflicting pain. The cost of their return was everything they'd left behind, the lives they once knew, now just echoes in a distant past. Flight 331's return became a global phenomenon. The world was captivated and unsettled. Governments launched Project Timeless, a massive investigation. Scientists found nothing unusual about the plane, except its journey through time. The event sparked debates about physics, faith, and reality itself. Some called it a miracle, others a warning. Time-slip cults and conspiracy theories flourished. The stock market reeled, society questioned what was possible. For the passengers, the new world was alien. AI, augmented reality, new politics, they struggled to adapt, strangers in their own lives. Their return was a miracle with a heavy price. The world had changed, they had not. The mystery deepened with no answers in sight. With no clear explanation, wild theories took hold. Time travel. Had the plane slipped through a wormhole, or had it crossed into a parallel universe, returning unchanged? Some suggested a gravitational anomaly, a freak of physics. Others whispered about alien abduction or secret experiments. Scientists found no evidence for any theory. The flight recorders were blank for 7 years. The truth was lost in that void. Conspiracy theories flourished, but answers remained elusive. The world was left with questions science couldn't answer. The mystery of Flight 331 became legend. The impossible had happened, but no one knew how. The passengers became instant celebrities, but their fame was a burden. They were studied, interviewed, and hounded by the media. All they wanted was normalcy, but that was gone forever. They formed a unique community bound by loss and confusion. Many suffered from temporal dissociation disorder, disconnected from the present, grieving the past. Relationships were shattered, families had moved on, legally they were dead, assets gone, identities erased. Special laws were needed to restore their rights. Children struggled most, out of sync with their peers and their own lives. The miracle of survival had stolen their future. They were saved from disaster, only to be stranded in a world that had left them behind. Their return was both a blessing and a curse. They were living reminders of the cost of the unknown. The world moved on, but they were forever marked by the impossible. Years later, Flight 331 remains the greatest mystery of the century. The official investigation closed with no answers. The plane sits in a museum, a monument to the unknown. Some passengers rebuilt their lives, others never recovered. They remain a close-knit group bonded by the unexplainable. The central question endures: what happened during those 7 years? The event forced humanity to confront its limits. The story ends not. It was a Wednesday, October 12, 2023. The morning at Denver International Airport was crisp and cool, sunlight stretching across the runways. Inside, Gate B-32 buzzed with anticipation for American Transair Flight 331 to Seattle. Families, business travelers, and students lined up ready for a routine journey. On board, 148 passengers, 6 crew, 154 souls. For a few hours, they'd share the same space, the same journey. The crew prepared the Boeing 737 with practiced efficiency. Captain David Chen, 52, a veteran of the route, led the flight. His co-pilot, Sarah Jenkins, 34, was skilled and respected. Flight attendants checked safety equipment and readied the cabin. The ground crew loaded bags and fueled the plane. Passengers settled in, stowing bags, buckling seatbelts. A child watched the ground crew below. A man opened his laptop. A couple held hands, excited for their trip. The safety demonstration played out mostly ignored. The doors closed, jet bridge pulled away. At 8:05 a.m., Flight 331 pushed back from the gate, engines humming to life. The plane taxied to the runway, waiting its turn. Captain Chen's voice welcomed everyone, promising a smooth 2.5-hour flight to Seattle. The weather was clear all the way. The plane turned onto the runway, engines roaring. It accelerated, lifting into the Colorado sky. For the passengers, it was just another flight. For the crew, another day at work. No one suspected this would be anything but routine. The city shrank below as the plane climbed. The world outside was waking up, but inside a sense of calm prevailed. The journey had begun, ordinary in every way. No one knew it would become extraordinary. The sky ahead was clear, the path familiar. Flight 331 was airborne, bound for Seattle. The day and the story had just begun. The plane disappeared into the morning light. The ascent was smooth, just as promised. The Boeing 737 banked west, Denver shrinking below. The Rockies appeared, peaks dusted with autumn snow. The sky was a flawless, endless blue. Passengers gazed out, some reading, some dozing, others lost in thought. The seatbelt sign blinked off. Flight attendants began beverage service. The hum of engines was steady, comforting. At 35,000 feet, the plane soared over wild, empty terrain. From above, the land looked like a crumpled map. Few roads, fewer towns. The aircraft was a silver speck crossing a vast wilderness. In the cockpit, all systems were green, autopilot engaged, routine radio calls made. No hint of trouble, no sign of anything amiss. The sun shone on the cockpit windows. The world outside was peaceful. The journey was halfway done. The plane was exactly where it should be, doing exactly what it should. For everyone on board, it was just another flight. For the crew, another day in the sky. The Rockies stretched below, silent and immense, the perfect day for flying. At 9:16 a.m., Salt Lake City Air Traffic Control watched Flight 331 on radar. The controller prepared to hand the flight off to Seattle Center. American 331, contact Seattle Center on 128.8. Good day. A pause, then Captain Chen's voice replied, strained, not routine. Seattle Center on 128.8. We have a situation up here. The sky, it's not right. The transmission cut off. No mayday, no further explanation. The controller called back. American 331, say again, what is your situation? Silence. The green blip on radar remained, holding altitude and course. More calls, no response. Other aircraft tried to reach them, nothing. Then, as the controller and supervisor watched, the blip vanished. No descent, no debris, just gone. The transponder signal stopped. One moment, a plane with 154 people, the next, empty sky. It was as if the aircraft had been plucked from existence. The time. 9:18 a.m. No distress call, no warning, just a mystery. The controller stared at the empty screen. Stunned, the silence was absolute. In the world of air traffic control, silence is the worst sound of all. The disappearance was instant, inexplicable. The last words, "The sky, it's not right," echoed in the control room. The routine flight had become an unsolvable riddle. The search for answers began immediately. But the only clue was a voice cut short. The world had just lost a plane in broad daylight. The mystery had begun. The sky held its secret. The control center erupted into emergency mode. Supervisors were notified, protocols activated, every frequency was tried, every contact attempted. NORAD was alerted, fighter jets scrambled to the last known position. F-16s swept the sky, sensors scanning the wilderness below. They searched for smoke, wreckage, any sign of a crash. Nothing. No debris, no fire, no trace. The mountains and forests were untouched. Controllers were baffled. A modern jet is never truly silent. Multiple radios, transponders, emergency beacons. None responded. It was as if the plane and its technology had ceased to exist. No distress call, no locator signal, no evidence. News of the missing plane spread quickly. At first, it was just a report. As hours passed, the reality set in. A major airliner had vanished in daylight. In an age of GPS and constant surveillance, it seemed impossible. How could a 120-ton jet simply disappear? The question echoed across the country. The search for Flight 331 was underway. The mystery deepened with every passing hour. The Rockies kept their silence. The world waited for answers. The disappearance triggered a massive search and rescue operation. The Rocky Mountains, thousands of square miles of rugged wilderness, became the focus. Civil Air Patrol, Forest Service, National Guard and local sheriffs joined forces. Planes and helicopters scoured the skies, ground teams combed forests and canyons. Searchers looked for any sign, wreckage, luggage, even a scrap of metal. The area was divided into grids, each searched methodically. Helicopters flew low, crews scanning with binoculars. Ground teams battled weather, steep slopes and dense undergrowth. Day after day they found nothing. No debris, no oil slicks, no signals. The search area expanded, but the result was always the same. It was as if the plane had been erased from existence. The frustration grew, hope faded. The searchers returned empty-handed again and again. The Rockies gave up no secrets. The mystery only deepened. Weeks passed, hope for survivors faded. The mission shifted from rescue to recovery. NTSB investigators waited for something, anything, to investigate. They had radar data and the pilot's last words, but no black boxes, no wreckage. Snow began to fall, hiding any possible evidence. Helicopters struggled in bad weather. Ground teams faced deep drifts. The massive effort slowed as winter set in. No oil slicks, no locator beacons, no satellite clues. Military radar confirmed the plane's track simply stopped. No explosion, no debris, just absence. After 3 months, the active search was suspended. Authorities promised to resume if new evidence appeared. The planes and teams went home. The mountains returned to silence. For the searchers, it was a bitter end. They had given everything, but the mystery remained. The wilderness kept its secret. Flight 331 was gone without a trace. For the families, the suspension of the search was devastating. No wreckage, no funerals, no closure, only questions and grief. They gathered for support, clinging to memories and hope. Airline and officials held briefings but had nothing new to share. The lack of answers was torture. A year later, a court declared all 154 people lost. Death certificates were issued, but peace did not follow. Some families became activists, organizing searches and sharing information. They formed a community bound by tragedy. The weight of not knowing was a burden they would carry forever. The wound would never fully heal. The mystery was now part of their lives. In the absence of facts, theories flourished. Experts, sleuths and conspiracy theorists all tried to explain the impossible. Some blamed catastrophic mechanical failure, yet no debris was ever found. Others suggested hijacking, but there were no demands, no evidence. The pilot's last words, "The sky, it's not right," fueled speculation. Some imagined a rare weather phenomenon or secret military technology. Others went further. UFOs, abduction, the supernatural. Most investigators dismissed the wildest ideas, but the lack of evidence left room for anything. The official investigation remained open but inactive. Theories multiplied, but answers never came. The mystery became legend. The world was left to wonder. The sky had swallowed its secret. Years later, Flight 331 remains one of aviation's greatest mysteries. No evidence, no wreckage, no answers. The names of the lost are etched on a granite memorial near Denver Airport. Families visit, leaving flowers and memories staring up at the sky. The disappearance changed aviation, spurring new tracking technology and safety measures. But the questions remain. What did Captain Chen see? What happened in those final moments? Was it a sudden disaster or something stranger? The fate of the plane is a story without an ending. The mystery lingers in the minds of families, investigators, and the public. The sky over the Rockies holds its secret. The scar remains, a reminder that even now, some things are beyond our understanding. Flight 331 is gone, but its story endures. The sky is not always what it seems. It began as an ordinary day, seemingly no different from any other. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and the hustle and bustle of daily life was in full swing. Sunny skies, busy airports, nothing unusual to report. Planes took off and landed with clockwork precision, each carrying its precious cargo of passengers and dreams. The air traffic controllers were going through their usual routines, guiding aircraft safely through the skies. Then something unexpected happened. A passenger plane appeared on radar, an anomaly in the system. It was there, a blip on the screen where no flight was scheduled. No record existed of its departure. No flight plan filed. Nothing. Air traffic controllers tried to contact the plane, their voices crackling over the radio waves, attempting to pierce the silence, but only silence answered. Their calls went unanswered, lost in the vast expanse of the sky. A growing sense of unease began to settle over the control tower. The aircraft was an old model, a relic from a bygone era of aviation. Its faded airline logo belonged to an airline that no longer existed, a company relegated to the history books. Yet it flew perfectly, maintaining a steady course, following all established protocols with eerie precision. But it never responded to any communication, remaining stubbornly silent, a ghost in the machine. Emergency crews prepared for the unknown, their sirens silent, their lights flashing in anticipation of a potential disaster. The plane approached the runway, its descent smooth and controlled, yet filled with an unsettling mystery. The world watched, gripped by fear of the unknown and the potential consequences of this inexplicable event. And curiosity, a burning desire to understand the impossible, to unravel the enigma that was unfolding before their eyes. The plane landed flawlessly, its wheels kissing the tarmac with a gentle precision that defied its mysterious origins. It taxied slowly, rolling to a stop at the designated area, its silence amplifying the surrounding tension. Relief was brief, a fleeting moment of respite before the true mystery began to unfold. No doors opened, no one emerged from within its metallic shell. The aircraft stairs remained empty, untouched. The engines powered down, their roar fading into a hushed whisper, leaving behind an unsettling stillness. And the silence deepened, a heavy blanket smothering the airport, amplifying the mystery that clung to the aircraft. The airline's name was a ghost from the past, a whisper of a forgotten era, a brand that had vanished from the skies. A company gone for years, its hangars abandoned, its legacy fading into the annals of aviation history. It was as if a relic from another era had materialized, a time traveler from a forgotten age standing incongruously amongst its modern counterparts. The media swarmed, a frenzy of cameras and microphones eager to capture every detail of this extraordinary event, broadcasting the mystery worldwide, beaming images of the silent aircraft to a global audience captivated by the unfolding drama. The plane sat motionless, an enigmatic presence on the tarmac, a silent sentinel guarding its secrets. A puzzle with no clues, a riddle wrapped in an enigma, defying all logical explanation. No ramp was requested, no ground crew approached. The aircraft remained isolated, untouched, no sign of life inside, the windows dark and impenetrable, obscuring whatever mysteries lay within. The tension was unbearable, a palpable weight pressing down on everyone present, a collective anticipation hanging in the air. The world waited for answers, glued to their screens, eager for any information that could shed light on this baffling event. The silence was heavier than ever, a suffocating stillness that seemed to amplify the mystery surrounding the aircraft. A riddle that defied explanation, a challenge to logic and reason, a mystery that begged to be solved. What was inside? Who had flown it across the sky? No one knew. The answers remained elusive, hidden behind the closed doors of the mysterious aircraft. The first piece of a confounding mystery had just landed, setting in motion a chain of events that would captivate the world. The world held its breath, suspended in a state of collective anticipation, waiting for the truth to be revealed, waiting for the secret to be revealed, for the silence to be broken, for the mystery to finally be unraveled. But the only answer was silence, a deafening quiet that only deepened the intrigue. The plane, a time capsule from a forgotten era, a vessel carrying secrets from the past, had returned with no explanation. Its arrival, a question mark etched against the clear blue sky. The ordinary day had become extraordinary, transformed into a moment of global fascination and suspense. The story was just beginning, the first chapter in a mystery that would grip the world's imagination, and the world was watching. waiting, wondering what secrets the silent plane held within. The investigation team cautiously approached the silent jet, its massive form casting a long shadow on the tarmac. They were unsure of what awaited them inside, what secrets the aircraft held. A palpable tension hung in the air. Dressed in full protective gear, a necessary precaution given the unknown nature of the situation, they carefully forced open the main cabin door. The locking mechanism seemed untouched, undisturbed. A cold, unnatural stillness greeted them. A silence so profound it was almost a physical presence. It was a stark contrast to the usual sounds of an aircraft, even one that had just landed. Inside, every passenger sat upright as if frozen in time. Seatbelts fastened securely, eyes open and staring blankly ahead, utterly motionless, like figures in a macabre wax museum. No panic, no signs of struggle or fear etched on their faces. No struggle, no overturned seats or scattered belongings. Everything was in its place, just a frozen tableau, a snapshot of a moment suspended in eternity. The cabin was pristine, almost unnaturally so. Lights on, casting a sterile glow, and the air conditioning humming softly, maintaining a comfortable temperature. Every instrument in the cockpit showed normal conditions, indicating a routine flight. Yet the people were unresponsive, completely devoid of life, as if time had stopped for them and only them. Investigators moved slowly and deliberately down the aisle, carefully checking each passenger for any sign of life. No injuries, no visible wounds or trauma, no signs of distress, no indication of a struggle or a sudden catastrophic event. Just silence, an unsettling, all-encompassing silence. In the cockpit, the pilots sat still, their posture suggesting a routine flight. Hands near the controls, as if ready to make an adjustment. Eyes fixed ahead on a distant horizon. The flight log's last entry was dated 2013, a seemingly ordinary notation. The plane had taken off, flown for hours, seemingly on a normal trajectory, then the record simply ended, abruptly and without explanation. It was as if the plane had skipped 12 years, a gap in time that defied all logic. Landing in 2025 with no time passing for those inside, a bizarre paradox. The scene was chilling, a ghost flight, perfectly preserved in a state of temporal anomaly. The mystery only deepened with each passing moment, each unanswered question. How could a plane vanish for 12 years, seemingly plucked from the sky, and return unchanged, as if no time had elapsed? The world demanded answers, clamoring for an explanation, but none were immediately forthcoming. The silence inside the plane was absolute, a heavy blanket smothering any hope of understanding. The investigation had only just begun, and the path ahead promised to be long and arduous. The passengers were rushed to a special medical facility. Doctors from around the world were baffled by what they found. Every passenger had dangerously low oxygen in their blood, hypoxia. Yet, the plane's data showed the cabin air was always normal. Stranger still, none of the passengers had aged since 2013. Their faces matched their old photos, untouched by time. But inside, their organs showed years of stress, as if they'd endured a decade of hardship. It was a contradiction. Bodies frozen in time, organs worn by years. The medical teams had never seen anything like it. How could people not age, yet suffer the toll of 12 lost years? The evidence defied science. Reports were written, but every conclusion ended in a question mark. The mystery was a medical paradox. No one could explain what had happened. A lead pathologist struggled to describe the horror she saw. Brain scans showed the passengers weren't simply unconscious. Their minds might have been trapped, aware but unable to move or speak. She called it the trauma of being awake while time forgets you. The world shuddered at the thought. 200 people, possibly conscious, locked in silence for 12 years. This theory explained the stress on their organs, the agony of endless awareness. The tragedy was no longer just scientific, it was deeply human. The fear of being helpless, trapped in your own body, haunted everyone. The question of their suffering became the story's darkest shadow, and no one could say for sure what they had endured. With medicine stumped, investigators turned to the plane itself. They dismantled it, searching for any clue. The black box showed a normal flight in 2013, then nothing, until the perfect landing in 2025. Life support systems were flawless. Oxygen masks never deployed. The plane's systems said everything was fine, but the passengers' bodies said otherwise. A young investigator dug into the plane's software. Deep in the code, he found a hidden subroutine, something not in the original design. It didn't seem harmful, but its purpose was a mystery. Could it have created a digital prison, tricking the systems or the passengers' senses? The code raised more questions than answers. Was it a glitch, sabotage, or something stranger? The technical mystery only deepened. The truth remained out of reach. With no immediate answers forthcoming, the investigators found themselves at a standstill. Frustration mounted as conventional methods yielded nothing. They decided to revisit the very beginning, meticulously re-examining all available satellite data from 2013. Every piece of information, no matter how insignificant it seemed at the time, was brought back under scrutiny. The team began searching for anything that might have been missed during the initial investigation. They knew that the key to unlocking the mystery might be hidden in plain sight, buried beneath layers of data. Technology had significantly improved in the intervening years. New, more sophisticated algorithms were deployed to comb through the digital archives with unprecedented precision. These algorithms were designed to detect patterns and anomalies that human eyes might easily overlook. After weeks of relentless effort, one dedicated analyst stumbled upon a tiny, almost imperceptible anomaly. A peculiar plane-shaped blip, briefly hovering over a remote section of the Atlantic Ocean. For a fleeting 3 minutes, the object remained completely motionless, a feat that defied the known principles of aviation and seemed physically impossible for any conventional aircraft. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished from the radar screens without leaving a trace. The discovery sent ripples of excitement and disbelief through the team. The data was immediately checked and rechecked by multiple experts. After rigorous analysis, the blip was confirmed to be real and not a result of any system error. Yet no known technology or scientific understanding could adequately explain the nature of this anomaly. This brief 3-minute event suddenly became the investigation's most significant and perplexing clue. What unknown force or technology could possibly hold a jet motionless, suspended in the sky against the relentless pull of gravity? The mysterious blip provided a crucial link, connecting the plane's initial disappearance back in 2013 to its equally baffling reappearance in 2025. It was clear that something extraordinary, something that defied the known laws of physics, had occurred during those 3 minutes. Was it simply a glitch in the system, an unexplainable natural phenomenon, or was it evidence of something far more complex and unknown? With each new discovery, the mystery surrounding the event only grew deeper and more perplexing. The enigmatic blip served as the only tangible bridge connecting two seemingly impossible and unrelated events. The world was left grappling with more questions than answers, struggling to comprehend the implications of this bizarre occurrence. The very foundations of our understanding of the laws of nature had been challenged, leaving scientists and investigators baffled. The investigation had taken a dramatic turn, venturing into the uncharted territory of the unknown and the unexplained. The mysterious blip remained at the very heart of this perplexing enigma, a key to unlocking the truth. And its discovery irrevocably changed the course of the investigation, transforming everything they thought they knew. The 3-minute blip pushed the case beyond normal science. Top experts from every field tried to explain the impossible. Every theory failed. Nothing fit all the facts. Some suggested a time distortion, 12 years for the organs, none for the bodies. Others wondered about unknown forces causing hypoxia. Each idea explained one piece, but not the whole puzzle. The official report was honest. We do not know. Science had no answers for the contradictions. The incident was classified as an unsolved decompression event, but everyone knew it was more. The mystery challenged our understanding of reality. It proved there are still things beyond our grasp. The world was left humbled and unsettled. The case remained open in every mind. For the families, the plane's return was a new kind of heartbreak. They had mourned, held memorials, tried to move on. Now their loved ones were back, but not truly alive. Physically unchanged, mentally absent, the passengers were trapped in limbo. Families rushed to see them, hoping for a miracle. But there was no recognition, no spark. The return was not a blessing, but a cruel twist. The law and medicine had no answers for their condition. The world debated what it meant to be alive. The families became the silent victims, living with the daily pain of the unsolvable. The tragedy was no longer in the headlines, but it never ended for them. Their suffering was the story's most human cost. The plane now sits in a secure hangar, a monument to the unknown. The investigation is closed, but the mystery endures. Scientists still search for the missing clue. The story is a modern legend, a reminder that not everything can be explained. The contradictions remain: normal pressure, severe hypoxia, no aging but stressed organs, a perfect landing after 12 years. It's as if the event was designed to be unsolvable. The case demands a new kind of science. The fate of the passengers haunts us. What did they experience in those lost? It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of day where nothing much is expected to happen. A day destined to be ordinary, blending seamlessly into the fabric of everyday life. The sun was just beginning its ascent, painting the sky with soft hues of pink and gold. But on July 31st, 2025, something shifted in the very air. A subtle disturbance, an almost imperceptible ripple in the usual calm. The date itself seemed to hold its breath, anticipating an event that would defy explanation. 4 children, missing for 14 years, reappeared. It was as if they had simply materialized from thin air, stepping back into a world that had long mourned their absence. No drama, no fanfare. Their arrival wasn't heralded by flashing lights or blaring sirens, but by an unsettling quiet that settled over the town. They were just there, sitting on a park bench in Oregon, as if waiting for a bus that was a decade and a half late, a bus that existed only in their minds, a phantom vehicle from a forgotten past. The lost children of 2011 had returned, and their reappearance was only the beginning. The first thread pulled on a tapestry of secrets, a prelude to a story that would challenge everything they thought they knew. A woman walking her dog saw them first, her morning stroll taking an unexpected turn into the realm of the unbelievable. 4 8-year-olds dressed in simple, labelless clothes. Clothes that seemed out of place, relics from a bygone era, adding to the unsettling nature of their presence. They weren't crying or calling for help, exhibiting a composure that defied their age and circumstances. Just watching the world with eerie calm. Their eyes, pools of ancient wisdom, seemed to absorb everything without revealing anything. The woman asked if they needed help. Her voice, laced with concern, broke the morning stillness, but was met with an unnerving silence. A girl with dark eyes just stared back, silent. Her gaze, intense and unwavering, held a depth that belied her tender years. The silence was so profound, the woman felt a chill and called the police, an instinctual reaction to the inexplicable, a desperate plea for answers in the face of the unknown. Officers arrived, feeling the same unsettling stillness. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, a sense that something extraordinary was unfolding. The children didn't react to uniforms or flashing lights, remaining detached from the flurry of activity around them, only watched with placid curiosity, as if observing a play, distant and unaffected by the drama unfolding before them. They refused to speak, sitting side by side, 4 little figures against an impossible story, a story that defied logic, reason, and the very laws of nature. At the station, they accepted juice and cookies politely, but without hunger or thirst. Their bodies seemed to function on a different plane, untouched by the basic needs of human existence. Their physical appearance was the first shock. DNA confirmed they were the infants who vanished in 2011, a scientific certainty that clashed with the impossible reality before their eyes. But they were 8, not teenagers, frozen in time, defying the natural progression of life. Time had passed for the world, but for them it seemed to have followed different rules, a separate reality, a pocket of existence untouched by the relentless march of time. The legend of the returned children began in whispers, spreading like wildfire through the small town. But the mystery was just beginning. The questions mounted, each more perplexing than the last, leading them down a rabbit hole of the unknown. Their return was not an ending, but the start of something no one could explain, a journey into the heart of the inexplicable, a quest for answers that may never come. In the year 2011, a chilling series of events unfolded across the nation. 4 innocent infants vanished without a trace from their very own cribs, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and shattered families. These disappearances occurred in 4 different states, with no discernible clues, no demands for ransom, and seemingly no glimmer of hope for their safe return. Law enforcement agencies were baffled, and the cases quickly turned cold. There was Leo from Ohio, Maya from California, Samuel from Texas, and Lila from Washington, all gone without a trace, leaving behind only empty rooms and the haunting silence of what once was. For 14 long years, their cases gathered dust in forgotten archives, their families aged, carrying the unbearable weight of uncertainty, and hope slowly faded with each passing day. Then, on that seemingly ordinary July morning in 2025, 4 families received an unbelievable call, a voice on the other end delivering the news that their child had been found. The shock was overwhelming, a tidal wave of emotions crashing over them as they tried to process the impossible. The children were 8 years old, not the teenagers they should have been after all this time. The reunion was nothing short of miraculous, a moment of pure joy amidst years of sorrow, but it was also wrapped in a thick blanket of confusion and disbelief. The children were remarkably healthy, bearing no visible scars or signs of trauma, but they wore strange, simple grey garments of an unusual, seamless fabric. Medically, their condition presented a perplexing puzzle. Their growth patterns were normal for 8 years, as if time itself had paused for the missing 6. Their faces were undeniably familiar, bearing an unmistakable resemblance to their families, but the timeline simply didn't add up, defying all logical explanation. 14 years had irrevocably passed for the rest of the world, yet for them only 8 years had gone by. The world had continued its relentless march forward, but these children remained untouched by the passage of time. Their return brought with it a mystery far greater and more perplexing than their initial disappearance. No one could offer a plausible explanation for where they had been all these years, or how they could have possibly returned seemingly unchanged. The impossible had undeniably happened, and the search for answers was only just beginning. The children were finally home, safe in the arms of their families, but the truth behind their disappearance remained elusive, hidden somewhere in the shadows. Their presence was both a miracle to be celebrated and an unfathomable enigma that defied all understanding. The families rejoiced at the return of their loved ones, but the world at large was left reeling from the sheer impossibility of it all. The lost had miraculously come home, but in a world turned upside down, nothing made sense anymore. Of the 4, only Lila spoke, and her words were riddles. She described memories that didn't fit our world. We were flying in the sky that doesn't move. The people outside the window were watching us sleep. Her tone was flat, her eyes distant, her words haunting. Investigators clung to her phrases, desperate for meaning. Was the sky that doesn't move a metaphor or something literal? Who were the people outside the window? Captors, guardians, or something else? Lila's answers were fragments. We waited. The light was always the same. She didn't remember her parents. We didn't know to miss, she said. The children's memories began in that strange, timeless place. Lila's riddles painted a picture of a world that shouldn't exist. The FBI brought in Dr. Aris Thorne, a linguistics expert, to decode the children's communication. He observed their silent, structured play. No words, just glances and gestures. Their movements were precise, almost graceful, as if used to different physical rules. Lila spoke perfect English, but with odd, emotionless phrasing. Her words seemed translated from a more logical language. Dr. Thorne's final interview with Lila changed everything. He asked about the sky that doesn't move. She replied, the window was dark, but it was full of light. They watched. They never blinked. Thorne felt a profound unease, intellectual vertigo. He concluded Lila wasn't inventing stories. She was describing real memories from a non-human environment. Her language patterns didn't fit any known experience. Thorne's report sent shockwaves. The children's memories pointed to something outside human reality. The investigation was forced to consider the impossible. Lila's calm, detached voice was the voice of a witness to the unknown. The mystery deepened, and science had no answers. The sky that doesn't move became the case's haunting refrain. At first, investigators assumed a windowless room, a bunker, a screen for a sky, but the facts didn't fit. The children were healthy, their clothes untraceable, their bodies untouched by time or sunlight deprivation. No technology could explain their perfect health or seamless garments. Theories grew stranger. What if Lila's words were literal? Was the sky a view from a place where time and space didn't work as we know them? An orbiting station, a locked world, or something extraterrestrial? The phrase captured the public's imagination, a child's description of something impossibly vast. It became a metaphor for their frozen, disconnected experience. Whether room or spaceship, it was a place that changed them forever. The sky that doesn't move was both a clue and a warning. Lila's most profound statement came weeks later. Shown a calendar, she listened as a therapist explained the years she'd lost. She looked at the dates, then said, "Time stayed, we didn't." The phrase turned the case upside down. Time, for Lila, was fixed. The children had moved through it or outside it. Their disappearance wasn't a journey through space, but a step outside time itself. This explained the age discrepancy, 6 years in stasis, 8 years aging normally. The theory fit the evidence, but belonged to science fiction, not police work. Investigators consulted physicists about wormholes and temporal displacement. Lila's words forced everyone to confront the truly unknown. Time stayed, we didn't. Their captors had mastery over reality itself. The children were not just victims. They were evidence of something beyond comprehension. The boundaries of the investigation had shifted forever. The physical evidence, or rather the distinct lack thereof, was as baffling and perplexing as the children's own words. It presented a challenge unlike any the investigators had faced before. Forensic teams meticulously combed through every inch of the scene, but found absolutely nothing of substance. No dust, not even the faintest trace. No pollen, no microscopic evidence of plant life whatsoever. No trace of earth, no soil composition that matched any known location. Their seamless grey clothes were made of a fibre completely unknown to science, defying all existing classifications. Soft, almost unnaturally so. Unterrible, resisting all attempts to damage or break it down. Unreplicable. The material's unique properties seemed to defy the very laws of physics. Medical exams showed perfect physical development, perfectly normal for age 8, but isotopic analysis of their hair and teeth revealed a composition that was undeniably alien. No match to any food or water found anywhere on Earth. The children had consumed a consistent manufactured diet for 8 years, a diet from nowhere on this planet. Its origin was a complete mystery. There were no forensic threads to follow, no tangible clues to grasp, no history, no records of their existence prior to their arrival, no past, no identifiable origins or family connections, no place to investigate, no leads to pursue, no direction to turn. The children were a closed system, self-contained and utterly isolated, dropped into our world from somewhere else, seemingly out of thin air. The absence of evidence became the most compelling evidence of all, a deafening silence that spoke volumes. Psychologically, they showed environmental detachment, a profound disconnect from their surroundings. No instinctive bond to parents or caregivers, only to each other, a shared connection that transcended typical familial ties. They moved and thought as a unit, their actions and responses eerily synchronized. Learning to be human from scratch, acquiring the most basic skills and behaviors. Their entire existence had been in a controlled, predictable environment, a sterile and regulated facility. Now the chaotic world overwhelmed them, bombarding their senses with unfamiliar stimuli. They were learning to be human, adapting to a world they were never meant to inhabit, but their starting point was a blank slate, a complete absence of prior experience. With no evidence, investigators studied the children's behavior. Leo, Maya, and Samuel were silent, not traumatized, but never needing to speak. They communicated through gestures, glances, and perhaps something more. Their focus was intense, their curiosity scientific. They catalogued the world, not with wonder, but with analysis. They showed no fear, only calm observation. Windows fascinated and unsettled them. They would look, but never touch. Lila explained, "You can touch it, it doesn't watch." The window in their world was an active observer, not just glass. They had no concept of lying, privacy, or ownership. Everything was communal. Their world was one of absolute transparency and observation. The clues were in what they didn't understand, a society without secrets, watched by a window that never blinked. Today we have more questions than answers. The children are back, but the mystery is deeper than ever. Where were they? Why were they taken? Who brought them back? The investigation is at a dead end. The clues point beyond Earth. The case is now a modern myth, a reminder of how little we know. Why these four? Why return them? Was it an experiment, a message, or something else? The motive is missing and the story has no resolution. The children adapt, but a distance remains in their eyes. Their words linger. We were flying in the sky that doesn't move. Time stayed, we didn't. It was a normal Thursday night at Boston Logan International Airport. Planes landed and took off, the radio filled with routine chatter, but then a voice broke through the static. It was weak, unfamiliar and not on any schedule. The controller who heard it first paused, thinking it was interference. The voice spoke again, clearer. "Boston Tower, this is Delta 331. We're on approach, requesting landing instructions. Over." The controller froze. "Delta 331? That flight was infamous, a name tied to tragedy, a flight lost 7 years ago. He checked his radar. No unscheduled Delta flights. His colleague looked just as confused. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the speaker. Someone was out there claiming to be a flight that vanished over the Atlantic. The senior controller grabbed the mic, hand trembling. What do you say to a pilot lost at sea with all his passengers? The shock turned to urgent action. Was this a prank? A cruel joke? The voice sounded real, professional but confused by the tower's hesitation. The silence stretched. Then the senior controller responded, needing to know who was on the other end of that impossible message. The legend of Flight 331 was about to begin a new, terrifying chapter. Controllers scrambled to verify the call. Was it a powerful radio prank? Someone who knew the history? But the details were too precise. The pilot's tone, the words, the confusion, it all felt authentic. The room buzzed with tension. The controller pressed the button, voice steady. "Delta 331, say again your call sign." The world of routine had just been shattered. The impossible was now happening in real time. The next few minutes would change everything. The tower braced for answers or more questions. The ghost flight had returned. The air was thick with disbelief. Every controller listened, waiting for the next word. The mystery was alive again. The past and present collided in the control tower. The story of Delta 331 was no longer just a memory. It was happening right now. The world would soon know. The impossible call was only the beginning. The search for truth had just begun. The tower waited, breathless. The voice on the radio waited too. Somewhere in the night sky, a ghost was calling home, and Boston was listening. To understand the fear, we go back to June 5th, 2011. Delta Airlines Flight 331, a Boeing 777, left Paris for Boston with 239 people on board. Passengers were families, business travelers, students. Just another routine flight. The plane took off on time, the sky clear, the journey uneventful. Pilots checked in, reported all normal. Passengers watched movies, ate, slept, unaware of what was coming. 2 hours from Boston, over a remote Atlantic stretch, the last radio message was routine. Then the blip on Canadian radar vanished. 1 second, Flight 331 was there. The next it was gone. Controllers called out, "Delta 331, do you read?" Silence. An alarm was raised. Search and rescue teams scoured the ocean. Ships and planes searched for days, then weeks. Not a single piece of wreckage was found. No life rafts, no debris, nothing. 239 souls vanished without a trace. The world was left with questions and grief. The disappearance became one of aviation's greatest mysteries. Families waited for answers that never came. The ocean kept its secret. The official story presumed crashed, cause unknown, but the truth was lost with the plane. The legend of Flight 331 began that day. It was a story of loss, of unanswered questions. The world moved on, but the families could not. The search ended, but the mystery endured. The flight became a ghost story, a cautionary tale for travelers. The silence from Flight 331 was total, until 7 years later, the impossible call came. The past was not finished. The story was not over. The world would soon remember. The ghost flight was back. The disappearance of Flight 331 haunted the world. Investigators found nothing unusual, no mechanical issues, no suspicious crew, no distress calls. Theories swirled: catastrophic failure, hijacking, secret landing, but there was no evidence, no ransom, no debris. Families lived in limbo, torn between hope and grief. Some imagined survivors on a deserted island, others accepted the worst. The official search ended, the case closed as presumed crashed. The world moved on, but the families could not. Memorials were built, names carved in stone. The silence was complete. Flight 331 became a legend, a warning, a ghost story. The world forgot, but the pain remained for those left behind. The mystery was unsolved, the book closed. Until that night, in March 2018, when the silence was shattered. The impossible call reopened old wounds. The story was alive again. The world watched, waiting for answers. The families hoped, feared, and grieved all over again. The mystery deepened. The legend grew. The truth remained out of reach. The ghost flight had returned. The world was listening. The silence was broken. The story was not over. The search for answers had begun anew. The 2018 call changed everything. It wasn't just a voice, it was a message from a vanished world. A plane lost for 7 years was suddenly asking to land. Logic, physics, reality, all defied. If the plane had crashed, who was calling? If not, where had it been? The pilot sounded calm, unaware of the years that had passed. He believed it was still June 5th, 2011. The aviation world was stunned. Families were thrown into chaos, hope and fear colliding. Was this a cruel hoax or a miracle? The world watched as the story exploded back into headlines. The mystery was now about time, reality, and the unexplained. Was this a time warp, a portal, science fiction come to life? The single radio call reignited a global obsession. The impossible was now possible. The world waited for answers. The families waited for closure. The legend of Flight 331 was reborn. The past was calling, and the world was listening. In the control tower, Senior Controller David Martell had to act. He treated the call as real. Protocol demanded it. Delta 331, say again your call sign. We do not have you on our schedule. The response was immediate. Boston Tower, this is Delta 331. We are a Boeing 777 inbound from Paris. Please advise on landing. The pilot sounded confused, unaware of the chaos he'd caused. Controllers scrambled, calling supervisors, the military, checking for similar reports. The signal was weak, moving, coming from the Atlantic, right where the lost flight would be. Martell kept the pilot talking, asking for fuel levels and souls on board. The answer, 239. The exact number lost in 2011. Every detail matched. This was no prank. The tension in the tower was electric. The impossible was unfolding live. The controllers were caught between procedure and the paranormal. They were writing new rules in real time. The world outside had no idea what was happening. Inside, disbelief and fear grew. The ghost flight was real, at least for now. The next moments would decide everything. The tower braced for the unknown. Then, something stranger. A junior controller spotted a blip on radar. It appeared out of nowhere, 50 miles off the coast, heading for Boston. The system requested a transponder code. The code returned, Delta 331 inactive for 7 years. The ghost plane was real in their airspace, getting closer. The FAA and NORAD were alerted. Military jets scrambled to intercept. As jets raced out, the blip flickered, then faded. The radio filled with static. The pilot's voice. Boston Tower, experiencing turbulence, instruments fluctuating. Suddenly the blip vanished. The radio went silent. The jets arrived. Nothing but empty sky and ocean. The ghost had disappeared. The control tower was left with more questions than answers. The impossible had happened, then vanished. The world would soon know. The legend had grown. The search for truth was more urgent than ever. The radar screen was empty, but the mystery was full. The ghost flight had come and gone. The story was now beyond belief. The world was watching. The past had touched the present, and then it was gone. Investigators searched for logical answers. Was it a hoax, a powerful radio prank, a hacked radar system? They found no evidence, and no one claimed responsibility, no technical proof. Voice analysis was inconclusive. Could it be a technical glitch? Atmospheric conditions? A freak coincidence? Experts ran simulations, studied weather, checked equipment, but the odds of all these events aligning were astronomical. A single glitch was possible, but not all at once. The logical explanations led nowhere. The mystery deepened. The facts didn't fit any normal answer. The case remained open but unsolved. The world wanted answers. The truth stayed hidden. The legend endured. With logic failing, people turned to the unthinkable. Theories of time slips, portals, and alternate dimensions took hold. Maybe Flight 331 flew into an anomaly, reappearing 7 years later. The pilot, unaware, tried to land in a world that had moved on. Some imagined alien abduction or a ghostly echo replaying its final moments. These ideas stretched the imagination but had no evidence. For families and investigators, they offered no comfort, just more questions. The case moved beyond normal investigation into myth. The story became a modern twilight zone. The world was left to wonder. The truth was out of reach. The legend grew with every retelling. The mystery was now part of our collective imagination. The ghost flight refused to fade. The search for answers continued. Today, the mystery of Flight 331 remains unsolved. The 2018 event added questions, not answers. The official file gathers dust. No new leads, no new evidence. The ghost transmission was never repeated. The world is left with an incomplete story. What happened to the 239 souls? Was it a crash, a hoax, or something stranger? For families, the pain endures. Hope flared, then faded. The search for peace is as lost as the plane. The story reminds us, despite all our technology, some things remain beyond understanding. The sky and ocean. Flight 4 had vanished from radar screens 3 years ago, a modern airliner disappearing into thin air. It was a ghost story whispered among pilots and air traffic controllers. A modern marvel of engineering, gone without a trace. Then, just as suddenly as it vanished, it reappeared. The scene was eerily silent. There was no fire, no sign of a crash. The plane was just there. Recovery teams moved in cautiously. They were trained for chaos, for fires and debris fields. Their primary target was the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, the black boxes. They were intact, a small miracle in a situation that was already overflowing with the impossible. The boxes were rushed to a secure lab. Technicians, the best in the world, prepared to unlock their secrets. The first report from the lab was baffling. The flight data recorder was blank. But it was the cockpit voice recorder that sent a true chill through the investigation. The lab was silent except for the hiss of the recording. It was a voice, a man's voice, calm and steady. It was unnervingly calm. Over and over, the voice repeated the same 7 words. "We were never meant to land." The investigators were stumped. They played the recording for linguists, for psychologists, for aviation experts. An airplane is a machine built for one purpose, to take off and to land. The phrase became an obsession for the team. They listened to it hundreds of times. The static itself was strange. Some technicians swore they could hear other sounds buried deep within the noise, whispers, faint musical tones, things that had no place on a cockpit recording. The mystery of Flight 4 deepened with every replay of the tape. To understand the depth of this mystery, you need to understand what a black box is. First, it's not black. There are actually 2 boxes. The first is the flight data recorder, or FDR. It records hundreds of different parameters. It knows the plane's speed, its altitude, the position of the flaps. The second box is the cockpit voice recorder, or CVR. This is the human side of the story, the pilots' conversations with each other, their communications with air traffic control on the ground. Together, these 2 boxes are the cornerstones of any modern air crash investigation. They are built to be almost indestructible. They are wrapped in layers of stainless steel and high-temperature insulation. They can survive impacts of thousands of G-forces. They can withstand fires of over 1,000 degrees Celsius. For the FDR on Flight 4 to be completely blank and for the CVR to contain only static and a single looping phrase is more than just unusual. It is, by all technical standards, impossible. The physical evidence of the plane was just as confusing as the black boxes. Investigators swarmed the aircraft, which sat pristine in the desert sun. But there was nothing. No signs of a struggle. No damage from a hard landing. The landing gear was down and locked, as if for a perfect runway landing, but here it was, in the middle of a vast, empty desert. Half-eaten meals sat on the tray tables, the food untouched by time. It wasn't rotten or decayed. A cup of coffee sat on a console in the cockpit, still warm to the touch. It was a time capsule, a perfectly preserved moment from the day it vanished. The investigators formulated their official theories, but they were grasping at straws. Every piece of data they gathered only contradicted the last. The plane was physically there, yet the data said it couldn't be. The food was fresh, but the calendar said it was 3 years old. This led a few of the more open-minded investigators to whisper about ideas that belong more in science fiction than in an official report. While official investigators struggled with their lack of evidence, another group of researchers was buzzing with excitement. Paranormal investigators and theorists of the unexplained. For them, Flight 4 wasn't a puzzle. It was a confirmation of a theory they had been discussing for decades. They had a name for what they believed had happened to the plane. They called it a sky loop. It suggests that there are areas in our world, particularly in the sky, where the fabric of our reality is thin. The Skyloop theory proposes that a plane can accidentally fly into one of these anomalies. When it does, it enters a kind of loop. It's no longer in our space or our time. Paranormal researchers point to other historical disappearances as possible evidence of Skyloops. The famous Flight 19, a squadron of Navy bombers that vanished in the Bermuda Triangle. The story of the Stardust, a plane that disappeared over the Andes in 1947, its final cryptic Morse code message being Stendek. But sometimes something happens. The loop becomes unstable. The gateway reopens. This is what they believe happened to Flight 4. If we accept the sky loop theory, even for a moment, it opens up a whole new set of terrifying questions. The plane entered this other place. What did the passengers and crew experience? The recording gives us a clue. We were never meant to land. Perhaps they could see something out of the windows, a sky that wasn't blue, stars that were not our stars. The psychological toll of such an experience is unimaginable. The food was fresh. The coffee was warm. This suggests that for the people on board, very little time had passed, but they wouldn't have known that 3 years had passed in the world they left behind. Their families had mourned them, held funerals, and tried to move on. They stepped off the plane expecting to see their loved ones, but instead they would find a world that had aged 3 years in the blink of an eye. Some believe they saw other travelers in the loop, other lost ships, other lost planes from different eras, all flying in the same silent, endless sky. Others believe they saw something more profound, glimpses of other realities, other Earths, like looking through a series of windows into worlds that might have been. The experience would have changed them. You cannot pass through a place like that and come back the same. You cannot touch the void and not have the void touch you back. The return of Flight 4 is as big a mystery as its disappearance. If it was trapped in a sky loop, an alternate dimension, why did it come back? These loops, according to the theorists, are usually stable. They are one-way trips. Once you're in, you don't get out. The fact that Flight 4 returned suggests that something intervened, something disrupted the loop, something opened the door and pushed the plane back into our world. This idea is, in some ways, more frightening than the disappearance itself. It implies that there is a force, an intelligence associated with these phenomena. Some researchers propose a natural explanation. Perhaps the anomaly that created the loop was temporary, and its collapse sent the plane back to its point of origin. But there is another, more unsettling possibility. What if something sent it back? What if the plane was intentionally returned? If something sent it back, what was it? And why? Was it an act of mercy? Or was it something more sinister? Was the plane sent back as a message, a warning, a calling card from another reality? If something sent the plane back, did it send it back empty? Or did it put something inside? The plane was a vessel, a container. The passengers were the greatest miracle and the greatest mystery. All 215 of them were alive and accounted for. When the recovery teams first opened the cabin doors, they found them sitting quietly in their seats. They were not panicked, they were not relieved, they were just silent. A plane full of people and not a single one was speaking. They followed the instructions of the recovery teams without question, deplaning in an orderly fashion, their movements slow and deliberate. Doctors and psychologists tried to speak with them, to ask them what had happened, but they would not or could not answer. They would simply stare back, their expressions blank. It was as if their minds had been wiped clean, leaving only the shell of a person behind. The reunions were heartbreaking. Spouses, parents, and children rushed to embrace the returned passengers, weeping with joy and relief. But the passengers themselves showed no emotion. They did not return the hugs. They did not seem to recognize the faces crying in front of them. They were strangers in their own lives. They had come home, but they had left themselves behind, somewhere in that sky loop. It was a young nurse working a late shift who first noticed the final chilling detail. She was checking on one of the passengers, a young woman who had been on her way to her wedding. The nurse was adjusting the woman's pillow, and for a moment the overhead light caught her eyes just right. The nurse gasped and stepped back. She quickly moved to the next room and the next. She saw it in every single one of them. In all 215 passengers and in the bodies of the flight crew as well. Their eyes had changed. The pupils, the black centers of the eye, were no longer just black. If you looked closely under a direct light, you could see something moving within them. It was a slow, swirling pattern, a miniature galaxy of soft, phosphorescent light. It looked like the deepest images from a space telescope, a swirl of nebulae and distant stars contained within the pupil of a human eye. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, and utterly terrifying. The passengers had become windows into the place they had been. They were no longer just passengers, they were artifacts. They were living proof that we are not alone in the cosmos and that the sky above us holds mysteries far deeper and stranger than... Flight 331 vanished without a trace. 7 years ago, families mourned, wreckage was never found, and the airline moved on until it suddenly landed yesterday at LAX with the same crew, the same passengers, and none of them aged a single day. The terrifying part, they don't remember anything, and they're not acting like themselves. Before you watch, don't forget to subscribe to The Last Knock for more real-life horror mysteries from the skies. It was a routine Thursday at JFK until an unidentified blip appeared on the radar. No transponder, no radio response. Just a silent aircraft heading straight for the runway. Controllers scrambled, clearing the airspace, fearing the worst. The plane, a Boeing 777, landed with eerie perfection. Emergency vehicles surrounded it, but the real shock came when they saw the faded Oceanic Star Airlines Flight 828 logo. This was the plane that vanished over the Pacific 5 years ago, presumed lost with all 239 souls. Yet here it was, as if nothing had happened. SWAT and hazmat teams approached, unsure what they'd find. The silence inside was absolute. No movement, no sound. When they forced the door, the scene was surreal. Every passenger in their seat, buckled in, eyes open, unblinking. The cabin was frozen in time blankets draped. Magazines in laps, no sign of panic or struggle. The passengers looked alive, but utterly vacant. Engines cooled in the background, but the real chill was inside. For those on the tarmac, reality itself seemed to warp. The world outside remained oblivious, but inside it was as if the plane had returned from another dimension. The boarding team could only stare, confronted by a mystery that defied explanation. 239 people back from the void, but changed in ways no one could understand. The ghost plane had landed, but its secrets were just beginning to unfold. The evacuation was methodical and deeply unsettling. Passengers had to be carried out, warm and breathing, but utterly unresponsive. They hadn't aged a day since the plane vanished. Medical teams ran every test imaginable: vitals, scans, blood work. Physically, they were in perfect health. Too perfect. A 45-year-old was still 45, a 6-year-old still 6. It was as if time had stopped for them. Neurological exams revealed something stranger. Their brains were intensely active, all synchronized in a rhythmic pattern. Not coma, not sleep, something new, something impossible. They needed no food or water, didn't blink unless touched, and didn't react to pain. They were alive, but disconnected from reality. Doctors were baffled. These were living mysteries, not patients. The question wasn't just what happened, but where had they been? The silence was haunting a plane full of people, but no voices, no awareness. The world's best minds were stumped. The passengers sat, breathing, but unreachable. The mystery had deepened. 239 people, present in body, absent in mind. The search for answers had only just begun. The world waited, desperate for a sign of consciousness. Weeks passed. The passengers remained in their trance, brains humming in eerie unison. Specialists tried everything. Lights, sounds, familiar voices. Nothing worked. Then one day a breakthrough. A man named Robert Vance spoke, eyes vacant, repeating, "The light is the beginning." Soon others joined in, each reciting a cryptic phrase. "There is no death, only the journey. We saw the design. The faceless are the guides." The phrases were haunting, spiritual, and offered no real answers. They never spoke to each other, only repeated their own mantras. Medical staff recorded everything, searching for patterns. The story they pieced together was fragmented. Tunnels, light, journeys, strange beings. It was as if they'd all witnessed the same impossible event, each clinging to a single memory. Most passengers remained silent, their minds locked together in that strange rhythm. The authorities now faced a new problem. Not just silence, but voices that deepened the mystery. The cryptic words offered no comfort, only more questions. The world was left to wonder. What had these people seen? The hope for answers faded, replaced by a growing sense of dread. The phenomenon was spreading, but understanding remained out of reach. The whispers from the void were all anyone had. The silence, now broken, was somehow even more disturbing. Amid the cryptic phrases, one voice broke through, Lily Sanderson. She blinked, focused, and spoke with clarity, recounting her experience. She described a brilliant, peaceful white light filling the cabin. No fear, just calm. The plane dissolved. They floated in a tunnel of light. Faceless beings, made of light, moved among them, intelligent, compassionate, communicating without words. They assured the passengers they were safe, that this was part of a journey. Lily said the beings tended to them, adjusting something within their minds. Then the beings gathered everyone, saying it wasn't their time, they had to return. One touched her forehead. She felt immense peace, then awoke in the facility. After telling her story, Lily fell silent, her mind rejoining the synchronized hum. She never spoke of it again. Her brief clarity left more questions than answers. The mystery of the tunnel of light deepened. Faced with the impossible, the government moved to bury the truth. Project Chimera was formed, not to solve the mystery, but to contain it. The official story: the plane was forced down years ago due to a terrorist threat. Passengers held in protective custody. Their condition explained away as collective trauma. Airport staff, first responders, and doctors signed strict NDAs. Evidence was classified, the plane hidden, the truth rewritten. Families would be reunited under careful supervision, the narrative tightly controlled. The plan: keep the real story from ever reaching the public. It was a gamble, betting people would accept a comforting lie over an unthinkable truth. The wall of silence grew brick by brick around the 239 survivors. But secrets that big rarely stay buried. The stage was set for a reckoning. The family reunions were carefully staged, but nothing could prepare anyone for what followed. Families, told their loved ones had been found, were met with blank stares and empty eyes. Hugs and tears were met with silence. The passengers were physically present but emotionally absent. The government handlers pushed the cover story: trauma, disorientation, recovery. But families sensed something far deeper was wrong. Their loved ones were alive, but hollow, living ghosts. The emotional toll was immense. Hope curdled into fear. Families took the passengers home under strict conditions, forbidden to speak to the media. Therapists and doctors, all part of the cover-up, monitored every interaction. The truth gnawed at everyone. This was no ordinary trauma. The seeds of rebellion against the official story were sown in these desperate homes. The mystery followed them, a constant, painful presence. The world outside remained in the dark, but inside these homes the truth was undeniable. The silence was now personal and unbearable. The government's wall of silence began to crack. Whispers leaked. An air traffic controller, a nurse, a grieving family member. Cell phone videos and first-hand accounts reached journalists. The official story unraveled as families went public, sharing the truth. The impossible landing, the unaged passengers, the cryptic phrases. Lily Sanderson's brother told her story of the tunnel of light and faceless men. The news broke worldwide. An instant sensation. The public was riveted, terrified, and fascinated. The government's narrative collapsed under the weight of evidence and emotion. Reporters swarmed the families, the base, the story. Theories exploded: aliens, dimensions, miracles. Officials had no answers, only denials. The attempt to hide the truth had backfired spectacularly. Flight 828 was now the world's greatest mystery. The conversation had changed forever. While the world obsessed over the passengers, the plane itself was under lock and key. Scientists dissected every inch, searching for answers. The black boxes revealed only normal flight, then 5 years of silence, then the landing. No data for the missing years. The plane's exterior showed strange weathering, as if sandblasted by unknown forces. Structurally, it was sound. Inside, nothing unusual. The fuel matched the original flight, as if it had just left. The plane was a paradox, ordinary yet impossibly changed. Experts debated. Was it a vessel for a new physics, or just a witness to the extraordinary? The real answers, some believed, lay not in the metal, but in the minds of the silent passengers. The aircraft remains a silent monument to the impossible. The legacy of Flight 828 endures. The passengers are home, but most remain silent, cared for in private wards. A few still whisper their cryptic phrases. Lily Sanderson is silent, her story a haunting memory. Their presence is a constant reminder of how little we understand. Scientists and philosophers debate collective consciousness, wormholes, the nature of reality. The synchronized brain activity has sparked new fields of study. The event has forced governments to quietly fund research into the unknown. The cover-up failed. Now the race is on to understand what happened and to control it. The world is left with questions. Who were the faceless men? Where did the plane go? Was this a warning or a glimpse of a new reality? The plane sits in its hangar, the passengers in their homes, and the world waits, watching the sky, uneasy and forever changed. The mystery of Flight 800. There are places on Earth that defy our understanding, voids where the rules of our world seem to bend. The Whisper Zone is one such place, a scar on the Atlantic Ocean, unmarked on any chart, but infamous among pilots. Radios go dead, compasses spin, and the air itself feels heavy with anticipation. Unlike the Bermuda Triangle, the Whisper Zone is a place of slow, creeping dread, a zone of sensory deprivation. It strips away technology, leaving pilots alone with the vast sky and the deep, dark water below. Its silence is its most terrifying weapon, swallowing sound, radio waves, and sometimes entire aircraft. The name is a paradox, the Whisper Zone. It suggests faint sound, but the reality is utter quiet. The name comes from old stories, pilots hearing strange whispers over static just before the silence falls. Some described a chorus of voices, a siren's call from the abyss. Modern aviators dismiss these as tricks of the mind, but the name stuck, a chilling reminder. Today, with GPS and global communications, we believe we've tamed the planet. But the Whisper Zone remains, a stark reminder that mysteries still exist. For all our progress, we are still small, flying, fragile machines through a vast, indifferent sky, and sometimes the sky pushes back. The Whisper Zone is not a legend, it is a reality that haunts the minds of those who cross the Atlantic. Pilots know its invisible borders and they know the stories. It is a place where the known world ends and the unknown begins. The silence is not just absence, it is presence, a force that waits. It is always hungry. The old tales persist, passed from veteran to rookie in airport bars. The Whisper Zone is a place where technology fails and fear takes over. It is a reminder that the world is not fully mapped. Some places are still ruled by mystery. The Whisper Zone is one of them. It is a silent moor in the middle of the ocean, and it is always waiting. Enter at your own risk. Flight corridors are drawn with precision, highways in the sky designed for safety. Yet a vast, rhombus-shaped area in the mid-Atlantic is conspicuously avoided. No official reason is given. No weather anomaly, no political restriction. The avoidance is an unwritten rule, a map drawn from fear. Sometimes incidents are minor, a 10-minute blackout, navigation systems flickering, logged as malfunctions. But the patterns are there for those who look. The same patch of sky, the same silence, the same disorientation. Airlines prefer rerouting to risking a headline. The history of the zone is littered with chilling close calls. In 1988, a DC-8 cargo plane strayed into its edge. 22 minutes of radio silence, no radar, then a sudden return. The crew reported instruments spinning wildly, GPS showing them hundreds of miles off course. They were lucky, others were not. Over the decades, at least a dozen smaller aircraft have vanished within its unmarked boundaries. No wreckage, no beacons, just erasure. These stories are passed quietly among pilots. A warning, stay away from the silence. The cost of fuel is nothing compared to becoming another ghost story. The Whisper Zone is a place where fear redraws the map. It is a region defined not by what is there, but by what is missing. The silence is a warning, and the void is real. Pilots know to avoid it, even if no one will say why. The stories persist, growing with each new incident. The Whisper Zone is a blank spot on the map, filled only with fear. It is a place where the rules change and survival is not guaranteed. The airlines know it, the pilots know it, and now so do you. The map of the Atlantic is not complete. The Whisper Zone is the part we dare not chart. It is a cartography of fear, and it is still growing. Flight 331, an Airbus A330 departed Lisbon for Miami on October 12, 2023. The flight was routine clear weather, flawless aircraft, experienced crew. The last contact came at 47 Zulu, placing the plane at the edge of the Whisper Zone. It wasn't supposed to be there. The flight plan routed it further north. Investigators believe the crew tried a shortcut, chasing tailwinds to save time and fuel. The data stream didn't just stop, it fractured. Final packets were corrupted, altitude and airspeed readings fluctuated wildly as if physics itself was breaking down. Then silence. No mayday, no final transmission. 289 souls vanished without a trace. The search was massive. Ships, planes, satellites scoured the ocean. No wreckage, no oil slick, no black box pings. It was as if the plane had evaporated. The Whisper Zone had claimed its largest victim. The official investigation found nothing. Families were left with only questions. The aviation world was shaken. The story of Flight 331 became a new warning. The Whisper Zone is not just a legend, it is a deadly reality. Its silence is absolute, and it does not give back what it takes. Flight 331 is the most famous case, but not the only one. The zone's history is a tapestry of disappearances and near misses. The Ariel, a private jet, vanished in 1999. Routine transmission, then nothing. A US Navy P-3 Orion lost all electronics for 30 minutes, flying blind until systems rebooted outside the zone. These are not isolated events. They form a disturbing pattern. Cargo flights rerouted, jets experiencing sudden drops in cabin pressure, pilots seeing stars below them in daylight. Each story adds to the mythos. The Whisper Zone is where the reliable becomes unreliable. Technology fails, reality bends, and the sky itself seems hostile. The stories are warnings passed quietly among those who fly. The Whisper Zone is a place where the known world ends. It is a void that resists explanation, and it is still claiming victims. The silence of the Whisper Zone is legendary, but it's the strange sounds on its edge that give it its name. Pilots report bizarre noises, distorted choirs, whispers in a dozen languages, rhythmic pulses. Captain Miguel Torres heard a voice repeating numbers before his radio went dead for half an hour. Even with modern systems, strange digital screeches and structured alien noises persist. These anomalies are dismissed as interference, but their consistency is unsettling. The fear is not just of silence, but of something listening, and sometimes speaking back. The Whisper Zone turns technical problems into existential ones. The silence is not empty, it is full of something we do not understand. What happens inside the Whisper Zone? Theories abound, but none satisfy. The leading idea, an extreme, volatile electromagnetic field, powerful enough to fry electronics and silence radios. But this doesn't explain the visual distortions, the temporal distortions, the whispers, the sense of reality unraveling. Some speculate the field interacts with space-time itself, creating pockets where physics becomes unpredictable. Flight 331's impossible data, altitude fluctuations, speed fluctuations, suggests a different reality. The Whisper Zone challenges our trust in the laws of nature. It is a pocket of chaos in a world we thought we understood, and it threatens more than just aircraft. It threatens our understanding of reality itself. Dr. Aris Thorne, a theoretical physicist, is the reluctant expert on the Whisper Zone. He calls it a reality soft spot, a place where the universe's fundamental forces are weak and pliable. Thorne theorizes a unique confluence of ocean metals and atmospheric particles focuses unknown cosmic radiation. This radiation destabilizes matter at a quantum level, making the rules of physics negotiable. The whispers could be radiation interacting with the brain, the instrument chaos, a reflection of reality itself fluctuating. Planes might exist in multiple places at once, briefly, catastrophically. If instability peaks, an aircraft could simply unravel, its matter dissolving, leaving no trace. The Whisper Zone, Thorne warns, is not just a danger to planes, it is a threat to existence itself. Beyond the science, there is human cost. Families of the lost live in suspended agony, no wreckage, no closure, only questions. Pilots trained in logic and procedure quietly fear the zone. The unwritten rule to avoid it is now law. Extra fuel is burned. Insurance clauses are added. The Whisper Zone has carved out a piece of the planet through fear alone. Amateur sleuths and grieving families search for answers, desperate to impose order on chaos. For them, the zone is more than a mystery, it is a wound that will not heal. The search for truth is relentless. The Whisper Zone is a challenge to our sense of security, and it will haunt us until its secrets are revealed. As of July 31st, 2025, the Whisper Zone remains an enigma. Flight 331 is a question mark over the Atlantic. Cause unknown, aircraft presumed. The world of aviation is one of precision, of numbers and of rules. It is a world built on the foundations of physics and engineering, where every action has a predictable reaction. Yet sometimes events unfold that defy our neat explanations. High above the Earth, in the thin, cold air where jet streams flow like invisible rivers, the unexpected can occur. This is the story of Flight 714, a journey that began like any other but ended as one of aviation's most profound and unsettling mysteries. When search and rescue teams finally located the wreckage of Flight 714, it was in a remote, almost inaccessible mountain range. The debris field was scattered over several square miles of unforgiving terrain. Investigators sifted through the twisted metal, searching for clues. They sought the black boxes, but amidst the debris, a recovery worker made a remarkable discovery: the captain's personal flight logbook. For investigators, it was an unexpected and potentially invaluable piece of evidence, a human account to supplement the cold, hard data they hoped to retrieve from the recorders. The last page of Captain Eva Rostova's logbook stands as a stark and chilling testament to the final moments of Flight 714. The calm, professional script devolved into a frantic, almost illegible scrawl. The entry begins with a jarring observation. Strange noise outside, not turbulence, a hum, a vibration. Ben hears it too. This marks the moment when the ordinary became extraordinary. Then comes the cascade failure. Instruments frozen, compass spinning, GPS is dark, we are flying blind. For any pilot, this is the ultimate nightmare. The final haunting sentence reads, "It's watching us. They're not from..." The sentence cuts off abruptly, leaving the reader to ponder the terrifying implication. When the official investigation began, the team expected the black boxes to provide definitive answers. What they found was far more disturbing. The data simply stopped. The cockpit voice recorder offered an even more chilling puzzle. 30 minutes of absolute, unnatural silence right up until the recording cut out at the exact same microsecond as the flight data recorder. This left investigators with a profound contradiction. The logbook described escalating panic and inexplicable phenomena, yet the black boxes recorded a placid, normal flight that simply ceased to exist. As forensic experts continued their examination of the logbook, they made a discovery that would add the most baffling layer to the entire mystery: 7 distinct fingerprints. The most shocking revelation was that they were bloody. The prints were faint, but analysis confirmed they were made in human blood. The results came back and the mystery deepened immeasurably. The 7 bloody fingerprints did not belong to anyone who was registered as being on board Flight 714. These were the fingerprints of a ghost, an individual who was somehow present in that cockpit, yet whose identity was completely unknown. The implications were staggering and deeply unsettling. In the face of such baffling evidence, investigators worked tirelessly to find a rational explanation. One theory revolved around a rare electromagnetic anomaly strong enough to disable every instrument on board. Another theory focused on sophisticated weaponry being tested. Could a military power have been experimenting with electromagnetic pulse technology, with an operative on board to observe? However, these earthly explanations fail to account for all the evidence. Each rational explanation crumbles when confronted with the totality of the mystery. When logical explanations fail, the mind wanders into speculation. The most persistent theory involves an encounter with an unidentified flying object, the only explanation that seems to fit all the bizarre pieces. In this narrative, the 30 minutes of silence takes on sinister meaning. Perhaps time itself was distorted, or the pilots were rendered unconscious by an external force. The idea is fantastic, yet it addresses elements that conventional theories cannot. Of course, there is no physical proof of such an encounter. These are theories born of absence, not presence of evidence. Today, years after its final journey, the wreckage remains a scar on a lonely mountainside. The official investigation is closed, but the story lives on in quiet conversations and curious minds. What was the strange hum? What force silenced every instrument? And above all, who did the 7 bloody fingerprints belong to, the 8th soul in that cockpit? The story of Flight 714 reminds us that the world remains a place of profound mystery. What really happened in that silent cockpit? The answer was lost to the sky. The day was July 31st, 2025. A sky of brilliant blue stretched over Heathrow Airport. It was a day like any other, filled with the familiar symphony of arrivals and departures. But then something unexpected appeared. An aircraft, unannounced and unscheduled, descended from the heavens. It moved with a strange, almost ghostly silence, its engines emitting a low, mournful hum that was barely audible above the airport's usual clamour. Air traffic controllers frantically scanned their systems. The plane had no transponder signal, no call sign. It was a phantom, a ghost on their screens. Yet there it was, making a textbook landing on the emergency runway with an eerie precision. Immediately, the airport's emergency protocols were activated. Red and blue lights flashed across the tarmac as fire engines and ambulances raced towards the silent visitor. The aircraft was a Boeing 777, a workhorse of modern aviation, yet this one looked ancient, as if it had been dredged from the depths of the ocean. The first responders established a wide perimeter, their movements cautious and deliberate. They were trained for fires, for mechanical failures, for hostage situations. They were not trained for this. Closer inspection of the aircraft only deepened the profound sense of unease. The Boeing 777, a marvel of engineering, looked as if it had endured decades of neglect in the harshest of environments. Its gleaming white fuselage was marred by long, creeping fingers of rust, particularly around the joints and rivets. The paint, once a vibrant symbol of its carrier, was now a pale, sun-bleached ghost of its former self. The landing gear, which should have been clean and well-maintained, was caked in a strange, reddish dust, a substance that geologists would later struggle to identify. The engines, 2 immense powerhouses designed to propel tons of metal across continents, were eerily silent. But it was their condition that baffled the engineers who observed them through long-range cameras. Streaks of rust and corrosion ran down their nacelles, and a fine layer of dust coated the massive fan blades. They looked as if they had not spun in years, yet they had just carried this aircraft safely to the ground. The windows of the passenger cabin were coated with a thick, grimy film, rendering them almost opaque. It was impossible to see inside, adding another layer to the mystery. Slowly, a specialized hazardous materials team began its approach. Their primary fear was a biological or chemical threat, some unknown contaminant that could explain the plane's ghostly reappearance. Dressed in full-body protective suits, they moved with a slow, deliberate pace, their instruments scanning for any radiological, chemical, or biological signatures. The readings all came back negative. The air around the plane was clean. The only anomaly was the plane itself, a silent, rusting enigma sitting incongruously on the pristine tarmac of a 21st-century airport. The mystery was not on the outside. It was locked away inside. The decision was made. They had to get inside. With all attempts to communicate with the cockpit or to open the doors via normal procedures failing, there was no other choice. A specialized airport rescue team, equipped with heavy breaching tools, was dispatched to the main cabin door. The suspense was immense. Every person on the tarmac, every controller in the tower watched on monitors with bated breath. The silence was broken only by the whirring of the team's hydraulic tools as they prepared to force their way into the silent fuselage. The mission was clear. Ascertain the status of the passengers and crew and uncover the truth behind this phantom flight. The team positioned their equipment against the L2 door, the main entry point for passengers. The powerful hydraulic spreader, a tool capable of prying open crushed vehicles, was brought to bear. As it began to apply pressure, there was a loud groaning shriek of stressed metal, a sound that echoed across the airfield. The door, sealed tight as if it were welded shut, resisted with incredible force. Finally, with a deafening crack, the lock gave way. The door popped open by a few inches, releasing a gust of cold, stale air that seemed to have been trapped for an eternity. The air that escaped from the cabin was not just cold, it was unnaturally frigid, carrying with it a faint antiseptic smell like a long-abandoned hospital ward. The team leader, armed with a high-powered flashlight, was the first to step across the threshold, his boots crunching on something unseen on the floor. As the beam from his flashlight cut through the oppressive darkness, the first view of the cabin was revealed. The scene inside was one of utter, surreal stillness. 187 passengers sat in their seats, frozen in the mundane poses of air travel. A woman appeared to be mid-conversation with her neighbor, her mouth slightly open. A man had a book resting in his lap, his finger marking a page he would never turn. A child was slumped against the window, its small hand pressed against the cold pane. Their faces were pale, their skin waxy and cold to the touch, yet there were no signs of death or decay. They were not corpses. They were more like perfectly preserved statues caught in the last moment of their conscious existence. The air was frigid, maintaining a constant chilling temperature that defied explanation. As the rescue team moved cautiously down the aisle, their flashlight beams illuminated more of the eerie tableau. In-flight meals were laid out on the tray tables, untouched. A plastic cup of water stood half full, its contents solid ice. A laptop was open on one passenger's table, its screen dark and lifeless. The cabin crew were frozen in place as well. One in the middle of the aisle with a drinks trolley, another standing by the galley, her hand outstretched as if to open a compartment. They were all there, every single soul accounted for, yet none of them moved. They were suspended in a state that was neither life nor death, a terrifying limbo that medical science had no name for. The initial medical assessment was baffling. Paramedics who entered the cabin found that the passengers had no discernible pulse and were not breathing. Their body temperature was just above freezing. By all conventional measures, they should have been declared dead. Yet when advanced life sign detectors were brought on board, they registered faint, almost imperceptible neural activity in every single person. It was a flicker of life, a ghost in the machine, suggesting that their minds were somehow, impossibly still active within their frozen bodies. As investigators continued their meticulous examination of the cabin, they made another discovery, one that would add a new and deeply perplexing layer to the enigma. Time itself appeared to have stopped inside the aircraft. On the bulkhead at the front of the cabin, the digital flight information screen was still illuminated with a faint ghostly light. It displayed the date, March 22nd, 2011. The time was frozen at 9:17 a.m. This single, stark piece of information sent a ripple of disbelief through the investigation. The plane had landed today, July 31st, 2025. But inside it was a morning from over 14 years ago. This temporal anomaly was not confined to the main display. Investigators checked the wristwatches on the passengers. A classic analog watch on a businessman's wrist had its hands fixed at 9:17. A digital sports watch on a teenager's arm displayed the same time, its battery somehow still functional. Even the clocks on the crew's control panels in the cockpit were frozen on the exact same moment. The discovery was staggering. It was not just that the people were frozen. The very environment around them seemed to be trapped in a pocket of time that had ceased to advance. The plane had become a time capsule, preserving a single moment from the distant past. The implications were honestly mind-boggling. Flight 331, which had been reported missing on a routine flight from Rio de Janeiro to Paris on that exact date in 2011, had been presumed lost to the Atlantic Ocean after its last known contact. For 14 years, it had been the subject of countless documentaries and conspiracy theories, another tragic mystery of the skies. Now it had returned, not as wreckage, but as a perfectly preserved vessel where time had stood still. The newspapers and magazines found in the seat pockets were from March 2011. The laptops and phones, when their data was later recovered, showed last activity moments before 9:17 a.m. on that fateful day. Faced with an event that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of nature, scientists and theorists scrambled to propose explanations. The spectrum of hypotheses ranged from the scientifically plausible, if highly exotic, to the purely speculative and supernatural. One of the leading scientific theories centered on the idea of a temporal distortion or a localized rip in the fabric of space-time. Proponents of this theory, often physicists working on the fringes of theoretical science, suggested that the aircraft might have inadvertently passed through a wormhole or a similar gravitational anomaly. Such an event could, in theory, transport an object through time as well as space, explaining its 14-year absence and sudden reappearance. Another, more grounded scientific hypothesis involved exposure to an unprecedented atmospheric or cosmic phenomenon. Perhaps the aircraft flew through a unique pocket of supercooled air or an undiscovered form of radiation at high altitude. This could have induced a state of suspended animation in the passengers and caused a catastrophic failure of all electronic and mechanical systems, freezing them at a single moment. This theory, however, struggled to account for the 14-year gap. The reddish dust found on the landing gear was analyzed, but its composition matched no known terrestrial or meteoric source, adding yet another layer of complexity to the puzzle. Beyond the realm of conventional science, more speculative theories began to emerge. Some commentators and fringe theorists pointed towards extraterrestrial involvement. Could the plane have been abducted by an alien intelligence, studied and then returned years later? This narrative, popular in online forums and tabloid media, attempted to explain the inexplicable by invoking a higher, unknown power. The perfect landing, the frozen state of the passengers, and the temporal discrepancy were all cited as evidence of a technology far beyond human capability. Finally, there were the supernatural and metaphysical explanations. Some suggested the plane had entered a different dimension, a place where time flows differently or not at all, before finding its way back to our reality. Religious and spiritual leaders offered their own interpretations, speaking of miracles or acts of divine intervention, though to what end no one could say. The arrival of Flight 331 was not just a puzzle for scientists and officials, it was a deeply personal and shocking event for the public, especially for those who witnessed it firsthand. Eyewitness accounts from airport staff and passengers in the terminal painted a picture of surreal disbelief. A baggage handler, taking a short break, described seeing the plane descend like a dream. He noted its silence, stating that it made no sound, none at all until the wheels touched the ground. Another witness, a passenger waiting to board her own flight, spoke of the plane's appearance. "It looked wrong," she recalled in a televised interview. "It was old and dirty, like a museum piece someone had decided to fly. We all just stood at the window, completely silent." These initial reactions of awe and confusion quickly turned to a more somber and reflective mood as the details from inside the cabin began to leak to the press. The story of the 187 passengers frozen in time captured the world's attention. News channels ran 24-hour coverage displaying the names and faces of those on board, faces that had not been seen in 14 years. The story dominated social media, with hashtags like Flight 331 and Ghost Flight trending globally for weeks. People shared theories, memories of the original disappearance, and messages of hope and support for the families. Amateur sleuths and conspiracy theorists created entire online communities dedicated to dissecting every piece of available information, from blurry photographs of the plane on the tarmac to leaked internal reports. For the families of the missing, it was a moment of incredible, agonizing complexity. They had mourned their loved ones, held funerals, and tried to move on. Now they were confronted with the impossible reality that their relatives were back, suspended in a state that was neither life nor death. The public's fascination with the event was immense. For the families, the experience was a torturous emotional roller coaster. Hope mingled with despair. Was there a chance their loved ones could be woken up? Medical experts were cautious, unable to offer any promises. A grandfather of one of the passengers, now an old man himself, spoke to reporters through tears. For 14 years we believed he was gone. We grieved him. Now he is here, but he is not with us. He is just a few miles away in a hangar, but he might as well be on the moon. It is a crueler fate than we could have ever imagined. Today, on July 31st, 2025, the enigma of Flight 331 remains as profound and unresolved as it was on the day the aircraft silently descended from the sky. The plane and its passengers are still held in that secure, isolated hangar, a living monument to a mystery that has shaken the foundations of our understanding of the world. The International Task Force continues its work, but the wall of silence remains largely intact. The world has been given a glimpse of something extraordinary, something that lies beyond the horizon of our current knowledge and has then had the curtain drawn shut. The questions that were asked on that first day continue to echo unanswered. The incident has had a lasting impact on aviation and science. It has forced a re-evaluation of what is considered possible. Air travel, once a symbol of human mastery over nature, now carries with it a new unspoken question. If a plane can simply vanish for 14 years and reappear with its occupants frozen in time, what other impossibilities are lurking in the vast, empty skies? The mystery has spurred new research in theoretical physics, with scientists exploring concepts of space-time and dimensional travel with renewed urgency. It has become a benchmark, a reference point for the ultimate unknown, a reminder of how much we have yet to learn about the universe. For the families, the story has no ending. They exist in a state of perpetual limbo, unable to mourn, unable to celebrate a return. They are tethered to a hope that is both miraculous and cruel, the hope that one day the secret to waking their loved ones will be found. Their personal tragedy serves as a constant human reminder that this is not just a fascinating scientific puzzle, it is a story about people trapped between one moment in 2011 and an unknowable future. Their vigil continues, a testament to love and endurance in the face of the incomprehensible. Ultimately, Flight 331 stands as a powerful symbol of uncertainty. It is a story that defies a neat conclusion, a puzzle with missing pieces that may never be found. It reminds us that for all our technology and all our knowledge, the world can still present us with mysteries that are profound, absolute, and perhaps eternal. The silent, rusted aircraft and its 187 sleeping passengers serve as a permanent question mark against the sky, a chilling and awe-inspiring testament to the enduring power